welcome to a new episode of Rediscovered Movies. I'm your host, Nomfanelo. So the film that I'll be discussing is Red, R-E-D, or Retired, Extremely Dangerous. So it's a 2010 action comedy film that's loosely based on the DC Comics limited series of the same name, created by Warren Ellis and Cully Hamner. The film is directed by Robert Schwentke, who's known for directing films such as Flightplan and Snake Eyes. And the film stars Bruce Willis, John Malkovich, and Helen Mirren. So here's a plot. Frank, played by Bruce Willis, is a retired, bored, and lonely living off his government pension in a nondescript suburb in a equally nondescript house. The only joy in Frank's life is his calls to a government pension processing center when he gets to talk to his caseworker, Sarah, played by Mary Louise Parker. Sarah is as bored and lonely as Frank and marks her conversations with the unknown Frank and her spy novels as the only things fun in her life. When something in Frank's past forces him back into his old line of work and puts an unwitting Sarah in the middle of the intrigue, Frank and Sarah begin a journey into his past and the people with whom he used to work with. Like Frank, they are red, retired, extremely dangerous. So the film was released in theaters back in October 15th, 2010. It opened at number 2 with 21.7 million. It was beaten by Jackass 3D. And it made over 199 million during its actual release, so about 93.3 million was domestic, while 108.6 million from international. In terms of reception, on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 72% critic score. Here's what they have to say with a consensus. It may not be the killer thrill ride you expect from an action movie with a cast of this caliber, but Red is still thoroughly outshines most of its big budget counterparts with its wit and style. And the audience gave it the same score of 72%. So the film is available to stream on Netflix and is on VOD, so check your local provider. So let's go on to first discoveries, but before I go on to that, I just want to say that, like, when I didn't know about Bruce Willis's retirement when I chose this film to cover for the podcast, this was like months ago, like earlier in the year. But I feel like, yeah, now, like with this news of him not being an actor anymore, I feel like this film will be like, it's a fun way to explore, like, his like accomplishments with this movie, because I'd say that for me it's one, I would say, of my favorite Bruce Willis performances, I would say, as of late. Because, yeah, obviously, like, he's great, like, in films such as Die Hard, Pulp Fiction, but I would say, like, in terms of his later stuff, I would say this film for me, like, is the best one. So, how I first learned about this movie, I think I first saw the trailers for this probably at the time in theaters. And I remember, like, they did a panel at the San Diego Comic-Con talking about the movie. So for me, like, yeah, with the concept, like, I was immediately excited for it. So I recall seeing it opening weekend, and yeah, like, I thoroughly enjoyed it at the time because it was a nice, fun, like, action comedy film, like, and it was nice to see, like, older actors get to play those roles, because usually they would either be, like, put off, like, to the side, most likely in, like, authoritative roles, either as, like, the boss or the handler or so forth, but yeah, it was just fun to see that, hey, like, older people can do action stuff as well. And I was surprised that there was a lot of humor in the movie, given that with the comic book, as far as I could tell on Wikipedia, it's more serious, but probably too, like with the humor, they kind of wanted to make it a bit light in tone, and I guess also too to just have fun with the material. So there's that. And yeah, for me, like this film still holds up, and this is way better than the sequel that came out a couple years later. Because yeah, when I saw that one in theaters, I was disappointed. But I would say yeah, just I would watch the first one, ignore this sequel. All right, let's go on to highlights. So comedy, I liked how it was used in the film. It didn't overshadow like the action, because for instance with the opening sequence, like it's kind of an unusual opening sequence for this type of film, because you pretty much see Bruce Willis's character, being bored like at home, pretty much with nothing to do except to call Sarah about the missing pension checks, which is not missing. And also, like, to he's trying to grow out his avocado, which has three leaves, which is hilarious. And also, to, like, it's during Christmas time, I guess, and his house is the only one that doesn't have Christmas decorations, which is hilarious. So pretty much he decides to put as much Christmas decorations outside as much as possible, but like the inside of his house still feels cold, if that makes sense. And yeah, like right when like we see like him at home, like it cuts to this mysterious team of assassins trying to eliminate Frank, and then we get a glimpse of his skills as a CIA agent or as a hitman. And yeah, like I thought like with that setup was an interesting choice. Like it kind of like, brings something different to the genre, where like you don't have to always start off with a action piece to hook the audience immediately. Like you could show like the characters, in their daily life doing about, where in this case we see like yeah, Frank is retired, like pretty much he has nothing else to do. So it was just nice to see with the opening scene the more of the character work as opposed to like the action. The relationship between Frank and Sarah, like I found like it was intriguing. So essentially, like they've been having phone conversations. Essentially, he claims to have like his checks were missing through the mail, and she would always like send them. But then we see like over the phone they have like chemistry, where they kind of talk about her, I guess, her love for these cheesy like Harlequin type books, like with Love Savage Secret, which is sounds like a cheesy title. And then once like she like tells him about it, he immediately starts to read those books. Like he's very like invested in, I guess, to continue the conversations with Sarah, to pretty much have an excuse to move forward. And so it seems as though that Frank, he really likes Sarah, even though they have like their conversations like on the phone. So I thought, yeah, the romance part was interesting. I'm not sure if I was completely convinced by it, but it's just, I guess, nice to see a more like human side to Frank that's outside of the killings and the missions and so forth. And let's go on with the premise. So I like how like it focuses on retired agents. They're trying to adjust to their, you know, new situations. And clearly, though, like they're not happy with the idea of retirement. Well, I'd probably say except Marvin, but yeah, clearly, like it seems as though they were probably let go from the CIA because age, or maybe like they decided to leave the agency altogether. That part is unclear, but it could be either or. But once like the plot of Frank being a target, it kind of gives them an excuse to force themselves out of retirement. The action scenes, I thought, yeah, they were fun to watch. I would say, like, for me, my favorites was the standoff between Marvin and the red haired assassin. Because it was hilarious, though, that when they arrived to meet Singer, Marvin automatically assumes that she's an assassin, which which of course frightens the lady because again, we assume that she's a normal person, and then with Frank pretty much tells Marvin to back off because there was no cameras or anything in her bag, and then later once with William Cooper and his team arrives to eliminate them, it was no surprise that the redhead lady, she's an assassin. And it was just fun to see, like, she's having, like, the grenade launcher while he has the revolver. I would say, like, him being able to disarm that grenade launcher, it might be a bit far-fetched, but it was certainly fun to watch. And also, too, another action scene I liked was the shootout sequence between with Victoria and Marvin and the Secret Service agents in the basement of the place. So, yeah, like that was quite fun to watch because we see like Victoria, she's in her element. She's clearly like having fun to use all those weapons to go after the vice president. And we see, I guess, like Ivan like comes out calmly to to put on the bomb that was hidden near the backup vehicle for the Secret Service. So yeah, like that's quite enjoyable. The technical aspects, yeah, of the film I enjoyed because with like the we see like the titles like of the different locations that the characters are in, like it feels like very pulpy, like it kind of brings a comic book feel to it. Well, yeah, obviously because this is based off a comic book, but yeah, like those are quite entertaining, and I love to. There was a moment when Sarah and Frank, they're in a car. This was after they escaped from the police. It looked like there was a tracking shot of them in the car before Cooper arrives. So yeah, that was cool. And also too, with that same scene, we see sort of like a shot of Frank getting out of the police car as the car is moving behind him. I would say like that moment, it might be a bit far fetched as to the car narrowly missing him, but it was certainly enjoyable to watch. It looks like it was put in some sort of angle. I kind of call it the spiral shot, even though the camera's not moving in the spiral. But yeah, that was awesome. I like how, yes, with Dunning, Alexander Dunning, played by Richard Dreyfuss. So he, I guess, is the villain of the movie, but seems to be more like of a snarky villain, like essentially a jerk. Because Clearly he does some shady stuff because he has that pre-recorded audio of his speech to pretty much throw off the agents that are listening in. It kind of reminded me of Mr. Big slash Dr. Kananga from Live and Let Die, where he has like a recorded, pre-recorded tape of him talking so that, you know, whoever's listening doesn't hear the full conversation. So yeah, that was cool. And I like, yeah, too, with Ivan played by Brian Cox. Like, he rescues everyone. Like, I don't know, in a way, it kind of like gave me similarities to his character, Mr. Waldman, from The Long Kiss Goodnight, which was the previous episode of the podcast. Because he pretty much, yeah, comes to the rescue in that film as well. So I don't know if that was like intentional, but that was certainly that I caught in this movie. And I would say the performances from the cast are solid. Like, I enjoyed, like I said, Bruce Willis in this role. Like, it's not, I would say, like, his performance wasn't over the top, but like, I really like enjoyed it because he kind of uses his isms, like, you know, with the quiet voice at times, but not is not afraid to go up there. And obviously, like, when it comes to his moments, either confronting the bad guys or him hanging out with the group or with Sarah, like, yeah, those are fun to watch with him. And but for me, like, I liked John Malkovich as Marvin. I would say that's perfect casting because essentially his character is very paranoid of the government listening or watching or trying to take him out. And I also liked, yeah, too, Helen Mirren's Victoria. It was certainly a departure from the typical roles that she did prior to this movie. And also, too, I like Carl Urban in this movie as Cooper because looking at it now is certainly different from what he's known as for his work in The Boys or like with the Star Trek films to an extent, because here he's kind of playing like the straight man, like trying to, you know, do his job to, you know, go after Frank and co. So yeah, that was cool. So let's go on to the lowlights section. So I think for me, like, the main issue I had was with that whole Guatemala subplot. So what we know is that the CIA pretty much wants Frank killed for unknown reasons. But then he mentioned to the vice president that he was present in Guatemala, which kind of makes me wonder why didn't he say this earlier if he knew that this all had to do with Guatemala? Because for me, it did not make sense. And then also too, there was a New York reporter named Stephanie, which we never see. Apparently, she was killed by the same team that went after Frank at the in the opening, and she left a list of names, I guess, of people of like a hit list that were apparently present in Guatemala, which included Frank, but also Marvin. Which I wondered, like, why is his name on the list? Because I don't recall him saying that he was present in Guatemala. And also, too, Frank and Sarah, they head to this CIA headquarters to retrieve a Guatemala file, I guess to learn more about that situation. But then he decides to go after Cooper, after the records keeper, played by Ernest Borgnine, tells him, oh, that he pulled Frank's file. But, and then, like, yeah, that fight sequence in the office, it was certainly a fun action sequence, but it was a very unnecessary action sequence. But I guess, like, it needs to show, like, those two confronting each other face to face. And then So after all this stuff, we learn apparently Alexander Dunning, he is the bad guy that works with Cynthia from the CIA agency. So I'm just wondering though, like, if he wants to like get rid of Frank and everyone that's on that list, why do it now? Like, why not do it back then? Because it would make sense to do it back then after when that situation happened. Because I would say for me, that whole subplot was very convoluted. Because for me, like, it would make sense that, yeah, so have the CIA, like, go after Frank, but then, like, just, I would say, like, I don't know, make it more grounded. Like, how can I say this? So, maybe not make it a big deal about, I don't know, the list, or probably just get rid of Guatemala altogether. Like, it's fine if they want to go after Frank, I guess, to get rid of witnesses, but yeah, it's just how like they execute it in this movie just did not make sense. And also too, I wondered though, like when the team was shooting at Frank's house in the middle of the night, how come like we didn't hear like sirens or any of like the neighbors complaining? Because they are very loud and obvious with the actions, and really though someone is going to hear something and or say or do something about it. So yeah, that didn't make sense. And also too, like with Cooper, like after when he fights Frank in his office, his arm gets broken, but then we see in the following scenes he doesn't have the cast anymore. So it's amazing how fast people can heal in this movie. But with a broken arm, that takes a while to heal. So yeah, that doesn't make sense. And also too, when when they are surrounding Alexander Dunning's house, I guess to move in on Frank. So Joe, played by Morgan Freeman, he decides to go in his place, but then we see, yeah, him getting shot. So I wondered who fired the shot. Was it a rogue agent that refused to listen to orders, or was it one of Dunning's people that decided to do that? Again, that was unclear. And also, too, if they wanted to kill the guy, why didn't they confirm that was actually Frank before firing the shot? Again, that doesn't make sense. I think that was just an excuse to get rid of Joe's character since he has stage 4 liver cancer, which again, with that, it didn't make sense on why he's able to move freely when he is severely ill with cancer. Yeah, so I would say just more like with the screenplay, like with those issues I pointed out, just did not work for me. Let's go on to trivia. So, this is apparently the first theatrical movie based off a DC property that was not made by Warner Brothers. Because we have like the Batman, the first Batman movie was from Fox, which was a spin-off from a TV series. And then you have Superman from 1948, which was from Columbia Pictures, was a serial. So I saw, like, according to Wikipedia, that Summit Entertainment, which distributed this movie, they optioned Red because Warner Brothers they didn't want it. I don't know why. So yeah, and because I think, yeah, like I'm not sure like if they were to reboot this either as a film as a series, like in terms of rights of either, because I think Summit is under Lionsgate, because I'm not sure if Lionsgate would hold the rights now or if it will be reverted to Warner Brothers since they, I guess, own DC Comics. But But yeah, like I think this material, like it certainly has the potential, I guess, to be revived again. So yeah, like I want to see that happen. So whoever owns the rights now, just let's make that happen. So apparently, as the script was in the works, it was apparently obvious that for those involved in production, that Bruce Willis was really the only person to play Frank. And I would say, yeah, like he did a good job with his performance, yeah, for sure. So I agree with that. And also too, on for casting note, John C. Riley was apparently cast as Marvin, but he dropped out, and then John Malkovich replaced him. So I thought that was interesting, but like I said, I felt like with John Malkovich was perfect casting as Marvin. So probably though, like if John C. Riley was still in the role, it probably will be a slightly different performance, but hey, it is what it is. And apparently Meryl Streep, she was considered for the role of Victoria, because that would certainly be an interesting choice, because out of the stuff that I've seen, of Meryl's, like I rarely see her do like action stuff. Maybe there might be the few one or two that she did. I'm not sure, but yeah, that would certainly be an interesting choice. So back to John Malkovich. So he read the first 40 pages of the script and he liked it, but he asked his agent on why he was up for the role of Frank. His agent said that he'd been reading the wrong lines and he was up for the role of Marvin instead. So that's interesting. Also, too, Love Savage Secret, which is the title of that, like I said, the cheesy Harlequin romance novel that Sarah reads, is say could be a composite of two romantic fiction novels written by Joan Wilder and Romancing the Stone, which I do recommend you guys check out that film. So I guess of the fiction novels would be Love's Wicked Kiss and The Savage Secret. So that's interesting if that were the case. And I just want to say too, like it was certainly a missed opportunity, like because the film they could have like released like Love Savage Secret like as part of merchandise for the film, because yeah, like that would be an interesting like to see like because that'll show obviously the romance between Frank and Sarah, and also too you get like women to come on board to watch this movie. So yeah, because I feel like with that like you could bring both men and women, into theaters to see that movie. But I would say, yeah, that was missed opportunity for merchandise. So during filming in Toronto, the police received several phone calls about gunfire from local residents who mistook the gunshots for the real thing, so to use effects. So that was interesting. And a final note, the purse Victoria used as a weapon was Helen Mirren's own purse. It was given to her as a gift from Giorgio Armani, and since it complemented the dress she was wearing, and since it was part of the script, she asked if she could use it, and the producer said yes. So it works out. All right. Now, should this movie be rediscovered? I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to say no. I'm going to say yes because it's fun to see all the actors in action. I love the comic book feel that it has with the technical aspects. The performances from the cast are solid, and I feel like it's great to see this film in parts, probably in clips on YouTube, but as a whole, for me, I would say it did not work, mainly because the whole plot with Guatemala was very convoluted. Because if it just focuses on, Frank being a target and him trying to figure out, who's trying to go after him instead of him like already knowing what's going on. I think that could have worked better for the film. All right, that pretty much concludes this episode of the podcast. So you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Nomfanelo. You can follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at RDMoviesPod, and you can use the hashtag RDMoviesPod. You can answer the featured question on Spotify. Like, share, and subscribe to the podcast on your preferred platform that's available. And you can submit questions, comments, and suggestions by email, which is rediscoveredmovies@gmail.com. Or you can leave a short voice message on anchor.fm/rdmoviespod. And if you'd like to be considered for the season 2 after show, please submit those no later than September 15th. If you are listening to this after that date, no worries, you could still submit questions and suggestions by email or voice message on Anchor. So I want to say thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode of the podcast. Until next time.